everyone, kia ora tātou, haere mai, and welcome along to Showy Ovaries, a podcast where I, Penny Ashton, am basically like the late great Jessica Fletcher, on the hunt for clues as to what might happen to me during menopause when my biological clock murders my ovarian output. Yes, that was a tenuous way to shove in an Angela Lansbury appreciation comment. She died today and she was a bloody tenacious showbiz legend, so let's all raise a toast to Mrs. Potts, who was riding her magic bed knob or broomstick into the stars. A quick reminder, as always, that I am not a doctor. I can act like one for sure, just like Jessica Fletcher acted like a policewoman. But you tend to get fined for impersonating doctors, so please do seek out an actual medical professional to help you on your menopause journeys. Be just as tenacious as Dame Lansbury and keep pushing for answers if none are initially forthcoming. Today's guest is not a doctor, but she is a very flash whiz-bang journalist. Anna Fifield is the current editor of the Dominion Post and the Wellington editor of Stuff. She only recently returned to New Zealand in 2020 after a glittering 20-year career, jumping from the Financial Times to the Washington Post, from London to the USA, Tokyo, Korea, Beijing, etc. as a foreign correspondent. She was the first person to go live on Facebook from North Korea and has penned a critically acclaimed book all about Donald Trump's BFF, Kim Jong called The Great Successor, the divinely perfect destiny of brilliant comrade Kim Jong-un. I'll expand more on her awesomeness in my second introduction, but please give a wild and crazy showy over and welcome to Anna Fifield. Hello, kia ora, welcome.
Kia ora, Penny. Thank you very much for that very fun introduction and kind.
I'm good. Well, there's more to come. I keep getting very impressive ladies on, and so then it takes me a while to encapsulate your marvelousness. And how is it going? So are you happy that the local body elections are over?
Yes, I am. I mean, it did seem to go for quite a long time, but
yes.
Man, it was so exciting.
Yes.
Especially in Wellington, it was really anybody could have won kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
The person who did win won with such a huge margin, you know, made it very exciting and took everyone by surprise. So.
Yeah. And whereas I live in Auckland and I'm less pleased, definitely less pleased. But one thing I thought that Stuff did a really good job on was uncovering all of the people that were running who were into misinformation, anti-vaxxers, voices for freedom, all that sort of stuff. So I commend you for, and they didn't really get in anywhere, did they?
No, they did not. So, yeah, that felt like something we could really do to contribute to democracy in the country. And so I was really pleased to be able to help with that effort and, yeah, to hopefully make a difference.
Fully, man. Like I noticed like every day, because I read Stuff every day, and I was just like, oh my God, look at that. This is so great. This is exactly what we need, because that's the problem with, democracy in general, is that people are so easily swayed, or they don't do their research. So to have you guys doing that research for us so that we could just refer back to the notes, as it were. I just Googled all of the people I thought about voting for. And I nearly didn't vote for one because she'd said some homophobic stuff in the past, but then I ran it past somebody who's gay on council who was like, oh no, she is actually good. So, you know, I was doing some deep research there.
Well done you for doing your research, not just getting out your paper and organising them alphabetically or something.
Yeah, I know. It can be overwhelming. And also I'm in West Auckland and I hate the licensing trust with a passion of 1,000 burning suns because they completely stifle all hospitality innovation. So I was all over because we have people that are running in the areas for those licensing trusts, and there is a group that's trying to change the trust. So I was busy voting for them and stuff as well. But this has become very niche in this podcast. So what I'm going to do now is I've got my very long introduction for you, which is quite long, about your marvelousness, and then we'll jump into everything from there. So feel free to call me out if I get anything wrong. So okay. Anna Fifield was born in March 1976 in Hastings, Aotearoa. She initially wanted to be an astronaut, but that was tricky in Hastings. So she did the second best thing and got a BA in English literature and language at Vic and a post-grad diploma in journalism from my alma mater, as we don't say in New Zealand, Canterbury. She started at the Rotorua Daily Post, but was quickly snaffled offshore interests, heading to the Financial Times, aged only 25, where she worked for 13 years, mainly as a foreign correspondent, including as US political correspondent from DC. She then moved to the Washington Post, only slightly different to the Rotorua Daily Post, where she became the Tokyo bureau chief as well as the Beijing chief. She's reported from all the luxury holiday locations of Iran, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and North Korea. She speaks Korean and visited North Korea 12 times and met and interviewed escapees from there, and then published her biography of Kim Jong-un, which has been translated into 24 languages. She was a Nieman Journalism Fellow at Harvard University in 2013 to 14, and in 2018 won Stanford University's Schornstein Prize for Excellence in Reporting on Asia. Then, in 2020, a certain virus started spiking its way through China, but also Xi Jinping started a spiky crackdown on foreign journalists, which gave Anna pause and made her realize it might be time to bring her young son home as a solo parent and potentially settle back at home at least for a while. She was buoyed by Sinead Boucher's purchase and transformation of stuff, and personally, I have seen the first-hand efforts and effects of her bringing culture back to the heart of the Dominion Post and supporting of the arts and Aotearoa excellence in general, so thank you for that. Since then, she has rattled some cages and ruffled some feathers with editorials calling for an end to tall poppyism, to promoting ambition, to despair at the government's lack of transparency around official information requests, etc. She has endured her own attacks of media bias from both sides, proving that you're doing it right, and even put one of my favourite swear words, brace yourself people, cunt, on the front page of the Dominion Post, causing so many pearls to be clutched that RSI was developed all over the O4 region. She did this to highlight how shocking it is to see the word out of context, as women in government do daily, in the misogyny they face in emails and social media, etc. And I thought that was marvellous. So anyway, please, one more time, welcome Anna Fifield. Hooray, hooray.
Thank you so much, Penny. I have to say to you about the C word, it still gives me pause to actually say it out loud, although I should know I should feminist claim it. I got 0 complaints.
Oh.
0. I actually had to contact our customer service people to ask if anyone had called to complain about it. Because, it's the first time the word cunt had been put on the front page of a newspaper. But I think it was a moment, I didn't use it gratuitously, right? We explained
you did
why
not.
You should be shocked. It is shocking. Here's the word. But I think it was the moment and people recognized that. So I actually felt like I got a lot of support for it and lots of cheers and that kind of stuff, but it was almost disappointing not to get complaints.
It's like, this isn't clickbait. Well, maybe it was clickbait, but for a good reason. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I thought that I'd read that there had been, but maybe everyone anticipated, but then there wasn't. That was great. So how big a decision, how hard a decision was doing that?
It was quite hard, but also quite easy at the same time. To give you the context, the protests had been happening in February. I was seeing the kind of emails that the young reporters in my office would get, all the reporters in my office were getting on a daily basis, like rape threats, death threats, really horrific words thrown at them into their Instagram DMs at like midnight, on this private social media and stuff. And the effect that it was having on even the most resilient reporters. And then at that same time, Sarah Templeton came out in Christchurch and unmasked her troll. And so there was a lot of effort going on at that time to mainstream this, to, talk about what women and the public eye were having to endure. So it really felt like it was the moment and it was the time to write that. And I surveyed the young women in the office and they all said, yes, let's do it. But I did wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh my God, stop the presses, just expecting Gladys and Waikanai to cancel her subscription and that kind of thing, because it was such a brazen thing to do. But yeah, to my happiness, that
is great.
People saw that it was a moment and that there's a group of society out there trying to silence women in public life and to stop them from running. So
yeah, and I feel like when I was looking through the candidates for the local body that there were less women, I felt like, than I had been seeing before. And I've got a friend, Judine, she was the deputy mayor of Nelson, and she's quitting just because of all the horrible shit that she got, and so that's the thing that's going to happen, is that women are dissuaded from being involved in democracy, which is we need everybody to be involved so that we have everyone reflected.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, well done. So I've got a couple of questions about your life and then we'll get to your menopause. But first of all, what was working for Jeff Bezos like?
Well, obviously we'd talk each day.
Yeah.
No, I never met Jeff Bezos, but I've got to tell you, it was amazing because he came along and invested in this newspaper that had been, like most newspapers in the world, getting smaller and smaller and smaller over the years and, in a permanent state of existential crisis. And he really invested in it a lot, like in the journalism, but also in the technology and the things that makes the videos go immediately on your phone when you look at the app and things like that, like the whole user experience. So
Right.
It was really exciting to be at an organization that had all that ambition.
Right. And did he in any way try to infect the news?
Never. The editor-in-chief and Jeff Bezos would have a meeting once a year when they would say, we need this much more money. And he'd go, all right, or you can have this much. That was it. There was no editorial interference. So, yeah, really a kind of perfect situation.
Did he own other newspapers?
No, first time.
And why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody was worried at the time it was going to be a vanity project, right? And he was going to be one of these, gazillionaire owners using it to further his own aims.
Rupert Murdoch, yeah.
Yeah. I think Comrade Black, or there's a whole bunch of them out there and things, but I think people he saw in it, the value of it. And also he bought it for $250 million. It was like the change down the back of his couch for him.
Yeah, right.
So I thought it was just something he thought that he could, do something different and new and support something, and all he did.
Yeah, which is, because he gets so much shit, but it's actually quite nice to hear a good story about the man. Yeah.
I mean, it is really encouraging as well to see that the Washington Post has reporters covering Amazon and doing a really tough job, treating them, fairly and holding them to account like all other big companies. So, so there's certainly no softballing there on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved it. Well, I mean, it must be interesting for you to have done books about North Korea and then find that the government not answering questions that they're asking them here to be quite astonishingly bad at that. So do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, to be fair, I don't really compare us to North Korea.
No, Jong did that, didn't he?
But yes, indeed. I took him down on that one as well.
Well done. Because it was hyperbole in the worst possible way. It was ridiculous. Anyway.
Yeah. And also pretty insulting to the people of North Korea. 25 million people who are basically in a huge prison camp. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was comparing us to the New Zealand I left in 2000, but also to the other countries that I'd worked in. And it was pretty shocking that in other democracies, it was just, so much easier. Like in Japan, I could talk to government officials much easier than I could in New Zealand, or the reporters here could in New Zealand.
That is fascinating.
What's going on here? We're proud of our transparency. And I just felt the need. I really felt like I was the frog that jumped into the pot and was like, what? It's boiling, as opposed to lots of people who'd been here, throughout and just noticed, that people would not respond to calls anymore. They would just email. And
that's a great analogy, because you arrived late and going, why are we all putting up with this? And have you noticed any difference since you were making noise about it?
A little, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to overstate my power here, but I made some noise, but I didn't only make some noise. I've also been having a lot of meetings behind the scenes with people and trying to introduce better systems and better communication avenues, but also to do better at our end as well, because I think part of the reason for this, the breakdown in trust, is because the media hasn't always covered itself in glory.
Right,
so,
okay.
So I think we can do better. I think they can do better. And, and we are not the enemy here. The enemy is an uninformed public, or, is misinformation, disinformation.
Yeah. And well, to me, there's like the proliferation of, it's that tricky thing between opinion pieces and news. And I actually, I think it was probably before Sinead bought it, but I stopped following all of the news alerts on my phones because it was just all opinion pieces. And that was doing my head in. I mean, that's difficult to navigate.
Oh, it totally is. But also New Zealand sends far too many push alerts. It drives me crazy. I follow hardly any. Like at other organizations, it's got to be a big deal to have a push alert. Anyway, I digress. You've hit on my pet peeve here.
Oh, no, and I agree entirely. I only follow Radio New Zealand and The Guardian. The Guardian told me Angela Lansbury was dead. I was very sad about that. That popped up straight away. Yeah, and because of that, I was like, Hosking having opinion is not a news alert. Or Simon Wilson. Yeah, either way, either side. It's not a breaking news thing. But anyway, I have so many more questions to ask you about your life that I'll probably just slot in along the way, but we should get on to what I like to call the meat and potatoes of the situation. So we're going to start off, first of all, with the question I ask everyone, which is, what has your journey with your body been like in your life, and how has that gone?
My journey with my body. Wow, that's quite a big question, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
My journey with my body has been kind of an up and down one a lot. And, like many teenagers, I went through some rough years there of hating my body and,
Yep.
not eating or doing other things like that, just, having that kind of tortured relationship, I guess, with it. But I also, I try to think all the time, no matter whether, I've put on 8 kilos since I returned to New Zealand, which I blame entirely on cheese scones.
They are very good.
I'll try not to sweat it too much. I think, my body still works pretty well. It still carries me around everywhere I need to go.
It's carried you around a lot of places.
Yeah. So I try to be happy in the skin I'm in, and even if I'm a bit, bigger now than I'd like to be, and I just think it all comes out in the wash. And as long,
But it is kind of crazy, isn't it? Yeah, but you're reporting, as you say, on a giant prison camp in North Korea and poverty and starvation and stuff, but that you can still be entirely worried about yourself within, do you know what I mean? You can stand back and go, this is so ridiculous. There's so much more things to worry about in the world. But yet we've had so much conditioning because that's what it is. So don't beat yourself about having stuff that's been force fed into you since a young age, even if you can see other people that, struggle in different ways. I don't know. I just think it's what it is to be a woman, indeed.
Yeah. I also think, in many ways it was quite, difficult or awkward. I spent a lot of my career in Asia, so I was big. I was much bigger. Even when I was my thinnest, I was still much bigger. I've got real, tree trunk Kiwi cankles, but I've got big legs for New Zealand. So right. I was always really conscious in Asia. Yeah, the people would be like, "Oh my God!" But in a way, it's kind of liberating because I'm like, I'm going to be bigger than you anyway, so I'll just be me.
I went shopping in Singapore once and this is a waste of time. All these tiny clothes.
I would walk into stores in Korea or Japan and they'd just shake their fingers at me on the way and be like, no, we have no clothes for you.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But so then it just becomes something you laugh about.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. And did you make more peace with yourself or no, or is it just this ongoing process or?
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And I think my weight is quite yo-yo, and I have been, I've done intermittent fasting for a while. And actually I loved that. Not because I lost weight, though I did, but because I felt really energetic. So,
I've had friends that swear by that. I'm the thought of not eating for a full day is not something I relish. I prefer relish. But my friend absolutely loves it. And her husband's lost heaps of weight doing that. But it's whatever gets you through, as long as it's not doing yourself damage, which apparently they're not.
Extreme. I think as I've gotten older, I have become much more conscious of how my body reacts to things. So how I react to carbs and things like that, and how that makes me feel. And there are many times when the sourdough is still worth it. But,
So I think all things in moderation, including moderation, is a good way to look at life. I think I know because I sometimes think I drink a bit much, but then it's but then I like having a glass of wine at the end of the day. And it's amazing that 5 o'clock time is the one where you really feel like it. And if you get past that, you generally are right, which makes me sound like a total alcoholic. But I just really like having a glass of wine, particularly if I'm cooking and things like that.
Oh, yeah. And it's not crack or something right?
Yes.
It's a glass of wine. I drink far too much coffee, but that's my vice.
Coffee.
So, I can live with that. There are many worse vices.
That should be the baseline. Is it crack? No, off we go then. This is good. And so what about having your son? Did that make you more appreciative of your body?
Yes, I guess it did. I never really thought about it before. It was a real surprise when a human being came out of my body, I tell you that much.
Yes. I've never wanted that to happen, so I would be very surprised myself. So, yeah.
Yeah. It was, but now I think much more about weight or anything. Like if I think about how I feel, and as long as I, that I'm capable of going up into the adrenaline forest with him and doing things, that's what I need my body to do. So I'm happy.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people, who are particularly overweight want to lose weight for their children to be able to be active with them. You want to be there beside them doing that sort of stuff. So he's 11 now, is that right?
Yeah, he's 11, yeah.
Right, okay. And how's he finding New Zealand? We're after that question. Do you like New Zealand?
He loves it. He's never lived here before.
Yeah.
So he really loves it. And he's very happy. Still got an American accent, which I can't squeeze out of him. But
my niece and nephew have American accents now because they live in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, of course. Which makes total sense.
Yeah. My sister moved there and they're in the American school, so they have that. So well, that's great that and are your parents still in Hastings?
Yes.
Or?
No, my mum is living with us in Wellington at the moment.
Oh, wow.
She's having some medical treatment, and my dad is in Christchurch.
Oh, great. So it's nice that he can see them more often and things like that as well. So what did you know about menopause before it came knocking on your door?
I knew that it existed, but that's probably about it. Mm-hmm. I didn't know much more than that. I mean, of course, I knew about hot flashes and that your period stopped.
Yeah, I think that's about what everybody thought. That's it. Were you away when your mother was going through it?
Yes.
Did she ever talk about it with you?
No.
And not at all?
No.
Right.
No. So no, because I was away the whole time. I'm just trying to think where. Yeah, I was definitely away, but it just never came up.
Right. Okay. And what was she like talking about body stuff? For periods and things like that.
No. We never had a particularly open. Like we didn't talk about it all the time in the way that some of my friends and their mums did. But you mean she did the talks and took care of me and did that.
You had the fundamentals.
The fundamentals, yeah.
Right, okay.
But we didn't talk a lot about that kind of stuff.
Do you think there was shame behind that?
I don't think it was shame. It was probably just the way she was brought up too.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. So now you are quite young to have been in menopause. So then how did that happen? What happened there?
Let me tell you my menopause story, Penny.
Yes,
I thought
please.
you'd never ask.
Yes.
As you said in the intro, I'm now 46.
Yep.
I went into menopause at about 36.
Wow.
So, very young. And I've I've talked about this a little with my friends.
Right. Well, I appreciate you for doing this. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's not something I've talked a lot about, but I do kind of think I remember when I was at university and there was a woman who was in her 40s or something, and people kind of talked a little bit about, she doesn't have kids because she went into early menopause. And it was kind of like something very secretive or shameful or something like that. So even though obviously I had no control over this, but I did feel a bit like, do I want to be talking about that I'm a barren old spinster in a public podcast? And I decided, yes, I did, because it happens to lots of women.
Yep.
And I think that, it's good to talk about all these strange things that happen to our bodies.
And I think it's good to dispel the notion that menopause means old, Yeah. Because actually even 36 is ridiculously young, but 50 is not that old, really. But we have this wizened cronification in the back of our mind about it.
Wizened cronification, indeed. And I just I talked to some of my friends before I did this, and I was like, I'm a bit nervous. One of them, I want to read her message. She said,
great.
There is great power in the rejection of shame and stigma that is only there to serve the patriarchal narrative. Seize that power, she told me. So here I am, I'm seizing the power. Yeah, so what happened with me is, so I had my son when I was 35. Mm-hmm. I was in the United States, and I, trying to breastfeed for a year like a good Kiwi, like the Plunkett tells women to do. So of course I didn't get my period for that year. And then, I knew that your periods didn't necessarily come back immediately afterwards. Your body needed to settle down into things. So when I was 36, my periods kind of came back a little bit, but very sporadic, and then just stopped altogether. And I thought, well, that's a bit strange. And I went to the doctor who referred me to an endocrinologist who did some tests and all these hormone tests. And I remember where I was when she called me and said, the tests are very clear. You have premature ovarian failure.
Wow.
Failure, that's a word, isn't it? It was the technical term for it.
And where were you, if you don't mind me asking?
I was at university that year in Boston, and I was at our school area, and I was like, I must have gone white or something because one of my friends came over and I just burst into tears. Just kind of involuntary, even though I wasn't thinking about having another baby.
I was about to say, so right, okay. Yeah. It was just the notion of grief of what you can't do now.
Yeah, and it just, I guess, the idea of failure as well. And she just said, your hormone levels are like 0 and things. It was like, oh, wow.
Wow. So that's the choice of language really affected you. Yeah. That's so funny how that's such a cavalier thing, but it has such a profound effect on you.
Yeah. But I also, it's good that she's using the real terms and that kind of thing. So it felt, in a way, it felt quite devastating, but also quite a relief to know what was happening and that kind of thing. So
diagnosis is everything as well.
Yeah, and so that meant that she could, take care of my body in the state that it was in. So for me, that meant going and getting a bone density scan because the thing I didn't know, one of the many things I didn't know, was the link between menopause and osteoporosis and what that does to your bones. So I had a bone density scan and it was okay at that time. I've actually had another one since coming back to New Zealand just to keep a check on that. So
is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Have you been doing weight-based stuff or HRT? Well, with this okay, you keep going. I'll shut up.
Yeah, so that's good. But so things like that to keep a check on everything. So,
and do they have any reason why your ovaries were failing?
No. So that's the time when I called my mother and I said, "When did you go into menopause?" And she was like, 55 or something, like totally normal like that, 52, 55, whatever it was, and her mother too. So there was no family history or anything like that of that happening. It was just completely random.
Is there something about pregnancy kicking it forward? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think, and so that was quite a tumultuous time of my life, and that I got pregnant and the relationship with my son's father broke down. And so I was a single mum from basically the time my baby was 2.5 months old.
Oh, right.
Yeah, really early on. And so I did feel like I had a lot going on at that time in the first few years of my son's life. So I felt really grateful that the universe had conspired to make sure I got pregnant when I did.
Yeah, true.
Because a year or two later, if I had thought, late 30s, I'll be fine, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that is sort of the nice serendipity of that. So what sort of symptoms did you have?
Well, that's the thing. I had no symptoms at all. Again, in many ways, I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
And that I didn't have the hot flashes. I didn't have lots of those symptoms that you associate with menopause. I didn't know that I was going through menopause. I didn't know I was perimenopausal.
Wow.
Yeah. So now that all my friends are at that stage and I'm like, whatever, I'm so over all this.
Yeah. Wow. When you talked to your mother, did she tell you what symptoms she had?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't ask her. Yeah, we don't really. You get the message.
Okay, I'm getting the idea. Okay, good. So you had no symptoms at all?
Well, again, it's hard to tell because there was so much going on. I was a solo mother of a young baby, so I was pretty tired. I was trying to work. I was trying to cover an American presidential campaign. There was a lot of brain fog and memory and just general tiredness going on, but I didn't have the classic symptoms, no.
Right, wow. So in a way I don't know if you've ever thought yourself as lucky because then you haven't had a period for a really long time.
Yeah. Think of all the money I've saved on Tampax over the past 10 years.
That's right. Even though I stopped using Tampax a long time ago, I didn't like those ones. No, I like the little bullet ones. Anyway, right. Okay. So, wow. So then you didn't need any treatment? You haven't looked at HRT?
No, I have had treatment. So at that time, what the doctor in the US did was she put me weirdly, she put me on the pill because I needed the estrogen, and I've been told I need to take estrogen until I'm 50 to keep my bones. So that's the main treatment for bones, in addition to calcium and weight-bearing exercise.
So not HRT. She didn't talk about that at all?
Not at that time, no. I went, onto the pill, as I had to be the progesterone as well, so I didn't get
cancer of the uterine line. I know that's one thing about the fact they've just funded it now. Have you caught up with that? They've just funded Utrogestin, which is micronized progesterone. Pharmac did that like 2 weeks ago because I was talking to one woman who wasn't taking the progesterone because it cost money, and she'd forgotten that the reason she needed it was to stop her getting cancer. So that's why it's so great that it's funded now. But anyway, right, okay. And I mean, this was at a time 10 years ago. There was still probably some stuff around HRT and the cancer and the WHI study and things.
Yeah, I think that the endocrinologist was she was clear about that. That was, the HRT was fine. As I think back to it, so I was really lucky that for most of those 10 years, and in fact now, I have medical insurance through my job. And when I was in the US, obviously that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I think probably what it was that the HRT was not subsidized very much or something. And she'd said that just take the pill, that'll be fine.
Right, okay. And that's on the track?
Well, again, I'm a bit of a weird situation because straight after that I moved to Tokyo, and then, I was there for 4 years, and then I moved to Beijing. So I haven't really had consistent care over that time.
Right.
So actually now that I'm back in New Zealand, I am on proper HRT, and the doctor says I need to take it till I'm 52 just to be careful because I have had interrupted care along the way. I haven't taken estrogen consistently. And that's, because I was living in foreign countries and doing things their way, or not being careful enough about taking all the medicines and that kind of thing.
And that's so interesting too, because that's basically taking HRT as a prophylactic against things that it can, and that's why I've asked a few doctors, like, is that something that they're considering now? And they thought not. So that's interesting that that's what they did, because that's what I've thought. So I'm epileptic, so it's a bit tricky about dosages and my other medications. I've got a fistful of medical conditions. I'm very exciting that way. So, but I'm like, let's prevent against dementia and osteoporosis and stuff. But there is a slightly elevated risk of cancer, but it is very, very slight. But that's the thing, you just have to know all of the things. Was it, so how is it managing your health while you're busy skipping across countries?
Yeah, I didn't do a particularly great job of it.
Okay.
Things are kind of a bit different in each country. Fascinating fact, when you get a smear test in Japan, what they do is they you lie on the bed, but they pull a curtain across your belly kind of thing, and they go around the other side, so to preserve your privacy.
Right.
So you can't actually see them. You're just there behind a curtain while they're down doing their business. It's quite strange, all the different things. But I think as well, maybe because it was unusual and because I was a foreigner, and I think there's probably lots of factors at play. So
they were going, look at these giant legs.
Exactly. Look at those ankles.
Sorry. Yeah. And because doesn't Japan it's got weird mix of things, isn't it? But do they revere the elderly more?
Yeah, it's not Confucian like China and Korea.
Right.
But there's a lot of old people. In fact, Japan is now mostly old people. So there is some kind of reverence for that, yeah.
And do you know what their approach to menopause is or anything like that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, because some people are saying that when certain cultures revere their older people more, sometimes the women have less symptoms going into menopause because I think it's sort of less traumatic for them instead of the chronification that, we are fed, etc., that we're all trying to change the narrative of. But if you're not on the lookout for it, you might not notice that sort of thing.
Yeah, I notice.
I love that you were because you were worried about talking about this, but yet you've actually pissed off Kim Jong Un quite substantially. I imagine, but you don't care about that. You're not worried about that, but you don't want to be open.
No, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
I guess it's quite personal, and I'll talk about lots of personal things actually, but I guess it is the wizened chronification aspect of it.
Right.
I still feel young and vital.
And you are.
So I guess it's just like, oh yeah.
Yeah. It's that
Actually,
society. It's the
in the,
patriarchy.
in the body of a 60-year-old woman or something.
Yeah, well, it's because I talked to Janine Crossan last week and she's long COVID and she was saying that she feels that it's robbed her of years of vitality. And I'm like, well, let's just say that you are vital and you will continue as you are, because it is just all that narrative bullshit that's been fed straight into us, especially in the 90s, 2000s, all that sort of time. There was a lot of that shit going on. Absolutely. So your friends are going through it now, and are you talking about stuff and things?
Yeah. It's all we talk about, nothing else.
And they're probably jealous of you.
Yeah, maybe. And sometimes they do make remarks along that kind of thing. But I'm friends with Sarah Connor, and I think she has that's one of the great things about New Zealand. And I haven't seen that in the US or in any other place I've lived and worked, is this kind of mainstream conversation about menopause, and how Sarah and you and people like this have brought it and made it something that's okay, and in fact we should be talking about, because it affects such a huge proportion of people and big chunk of society.
Half of people.
But how workplaces can be mindful of this and cater to this and be flexible around this kind of thing. So it is really, really refreshing to see how this is being discussed and is not shameful. So they talk a lot about being a perimenopausal women, and I talk a lot about
I mean, Sarah's story, because I just interviewed her a couple of weeks ago, that intense, with those panic attacks and stuff like that. And especially for me, that's the big one, is being the mental health aspect and people not knowing it's to do with their hormones and thinking they're going cravey, basically, is, that's the big thing. The UK is definitely a step ahead of us again with Davina McCall's done a lot for that. Yeah, she did a big documentary probably about 2 years ago, and they're definitely a step ahead of us with the public discourse. And Penny Lancaster and Rod Stewart went on television saying men need to learn about menopause and stuff like that.
Really? I can't believe this passed me by.
Yep. Penny Lancaster was throwing saucepans at him in the kitchen and didn't quite, they were like, what the fuck is happening? And then found out it was her menopause. And then he went and talked about it on the television, which I was like, go Rod.
Wow. Yeah, so in so many ways I do feel really lucky.
Yeah.
And that I'm not conscious of going through any of that stuff. Or at the time I was, attributing it to a stressful divorce and being a single working mother and things like that.
Well, and that's the thing. It's so difficult sometimes as a woman you can't compartmentalize, because it's, and then things like a lot of the symptoms for long COVID are a lot of the symptoms for menopause, because I was talking to Janine about it, and you're like, well, which is it? So yeah. But it is, I mean, for something that was so traumatic for you, it's wonderful that it didn't wreak havoc on you the way it has other people from such a young age, I think.
Yeah. And when I say traumatic, it was one day that I was kind of shocked about it and things it didn't. I soon got on with it. I was grateful to have my son, and that's worked just fine. I didn't meet anybody else, shortly after that. So there was no prospect of a second baby or anything. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, for me, because I've never wanted them, it'd be like, woohoo! But that's sort of stuff. But, at 36 and also not having the knowledge that we do now around menopause and stuff, that's you would feel old before your time. I can totally see that. So now that you are back in New Zealand, how are you finding, and I'm going to ask you that question, how do you like New Zealand?
I love New Zealand. I mean, I am so happy to be home. I mean, it's been a really big 2 years. I'd never owned a house before, so I bought my first house.
I read that.
Terrifying.
Yes. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah. Well, I bought a complete derelict, shithole for an enormous amount of money. So yeah.
Welcome to the New Zealand market. Right. Okay.
I loved it.
Have you been doing it up?
Well, yeah, slowly.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. But it's that sense of place, and I didn't quite realize how much I missed having roots and how much my son really needed roots. So
yeah, right.
I mean, it has been wonderful that I've got this group of really great, successful, kick-ass women friends who I went to university with or have known for a long time, and they're all still here. Welcomed me back into their creative, warm embrace. So having that community and things is what's really made it.
Yeah. I read that you said that you feel like yourself again now.
Yeah.
Which is quite delightful.
Yeah. And I'm not even quite sure what I mean about that, but I think I just feel like I'm breathing out all the time and just feel comfortable. And, I every single job I've ever had, I've had like imposter syndrome, thinking, oh God, this is the time they find out that I'm a fraud, blah, blah, the usual
Yep.
female imposter syndrome thing. Except now when I'm doing a job, I'd never edited anything before in my life. And they gave me the job as the editor of this newspaper. It's the first time I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm like,
that's amazing.
I've got this. Yeah, I know how to do this. So
why do you think that is?
I mean, who knew? Imposter syndrome is irrational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about this today because I was talking to Jackie Clark because there's some touring stuff we were talking about, but that, and she said she's had it and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, why? The human race, it's just bullshit that we're wired to doubt ourselves so much. Like people talk about intelligent design of God. I'm an atheist. I'm like, well, if he designed us to hate ourselves so much and have to get out of our own way to succeed, then he's lacking a little bit, shall we say. So it is just so bizarre that it's so hardwired into all of us to doubt ourselves. And I've said this before, but just hearing the words imposter syndrome and realizing it was a thing and therefore wasn't just me was huge. So I think the fact we're actually talking about it now and things is like, because I just thought that I was the only one that thought, what am I here doing this gig? I probably shouldn't be here. Why am I in Australia doing these gigs? And then you get to this point and go, I deserve to be here just as much as everybody. But it's great that you have that security in such a big position.
Yeah, it is. It feels good. And I really am enjoying working with my team here and, trying to do better every day. So.
And do you think that's because you're in New Zealand? Do you feel that that's connected to it? Don't I?
I don't know. I have thought about, would I feel the same way if I was in Washington, which is where I thought I would go back to? No, I think it's about being in New Zealand.
Right. Great. And yes, and I was reading that you were thinking about going to the States, but that it is a bit of a shit show right now.
Yes. Wow, you've done your homework, Penny. Yeah, I think that after China, I would, I was thinking about when my son was going to be settling down for high school and that I wanted to settle somewhere. But I was working for the Washington Post and there's so many opportunities and, it's a great newspaper. So I just thought I would go back there. But it was really Trump. At that time, 2020, and even though I knew Trump wasn't going to last forever, I kind of felt like Trumpism, like he'd let that genie out of the bottle and the genie was going to be there. And everything we've seen since then, Roe versus Wade, this kind of terrifying stuff that's happening in the United States is that, is like I didn't want to raise my son in that environment.
Yeah, I get that.
Not about Roe versus Wade. It's about inclusion and tolerance and open-mindedness.
Oh, absolutely. But also democracy. Like America is not a democracy. There is overwhelming support for abortion in America, but because a certain minority with their gerrymandering and their stupid president putting, I always say how many abortions has Donald Trump played for in his life? Quite a few, I would say. And that he's prepared to throw all of that under the bus for political expediency for some fucking dictatorship that he wanted to have that turned into I'm trying to be a military coup with these idiots storming the Capitol. Anyway, I can see that you might not want to be in that world.
Yeah.
You might want to go back to complaining that the government's not writing you a letter quick enough,
Yeah. It's a good complaint to have, I think, and to be there. But also I think, I didn't say in so many words, but I think what it is connection. And that it's connection to my little coven of witches I've got here, who I missed and things, but it's also I was working for an American newspaper, writing for an American audience in all these different foreign countries, and I didn't feel particularly connected to any of them, right? And now I'm home and I'm part of my community and contributing to my community, I hope. So that adds that whole extra sense of meaning to everything.
And I think so. And I think that comes through in the editorials because we are ridiculously parochial as well. Like if somebody foreign came to say these things to us, then people would be like, who the hell do they think they are doing that? But it's like, oh, she's from Hastings. So I can see that would play into that. I am not just blowing smoke up your ass, which, as I always say, is a very strange expression. Why would that be something good that I was suddenly blowing smoke up your ass? But I totally felt the difference just when I did Promise and Promiscuity at Circa in 2020 to suddenly have the editor of the paper coming to see my show and tweeting about it. Like that doesn't happen very often. So I was like, this is amazing. And, putting orchestras on the front cover and stuff like that we appreciate that and feel that and see that. like, and because I can't take out all the ads I would love to take out in the Dominion Post, just for financials and stuff. But like the quid pro quo of we love to have you and invite you to our shows to talk about and, and just all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'm babbling, but I really felt the difference compared to, say, some other newspapers in the country that we won't
thank
name.
you. I mean, so I'd been in Wellington in the 90s, and so it was a bit of a shock to come back and I'd be like, where's all the arts coverage? Like, we're not just the political capital,
Yeah.
So that was really important for me to get that flavour and texture and do everything we could on that front. So,
great, because sport is always, and that's what it gets me. It's like, how many ads does sport take out in the paper? Like, where's the big sports classified section where they plow all their money into ads in the paper, which they don't, but yet they still get 8 to 10 pages and things like that. I realize that sport is very important to a lot of people, not me.
That's determined by readers rather than ads, I think. But readers also want arts and culture and all that good stuff. And positive, constructive, optimistic stuff as well.
Yes, so, I like that you're trying to do tall poppy as a good thing. Tell me about people that are achieving great things and let's write about them. I thought that was very charming as well. So, excellent. Is there anything?
I'll just jump in there because, first of all, I have to say I discovered you when I went to at Meow, the bad diary entries.
Oh, right. Were you back visiting? Were you?
No, I just moved back and I went to Meow that night. The lit crawl was on. You and Ted Camp were up there. It was amazing. And I was like, how lucky am I? We don't need our borders open. We've got it all right here. And so that's what made me think I have to come to Promise and Promiscuity.
Oh, well, that's delightful. Thank you. And I did long in that. I felt bad that I went long because I'm a professional.
It was great. It was so much fun. But I just have to do a little plug in case it's still on before when your podcast comes out. The Wasp at Circa at the moment, brilliant, incredible. Miriama McDowell, and now that I've said that, I can't remember the other.
Bree Peters.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Go me.
So good. So
great. No, this is going to come out on Monday. So you've done very good things for saving me having a podcast next week. It's funny. I usually like to work quite far in advance, but the last few weeks has been a little bit seat of my pants. So this is exciting. And next week is World Menopause Day is on the 18th. So this is going to come out on the 17th. And then I'm going to do one with Tusiata for the 18th. But great. Yes, that's good that you are going to see the theatre and things like that. We appreciate that. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk to around menopause at all?
No, I think I've talked much more about my menopause in this podcast than I have ever before in my whole life.
Well, I appreciate that. And I was expecting it to be, this is going to sound diminishing, but I was expecting it to be more traumatic because of that. But I think that it's a good story because a lot of people are like, oh, my menopause is boring because it was easy, but I want to run the full gamut of all the different menopause experiences. So yours was early, which could be slightly traumatic, but yet not harrowing. So hooray.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so I guess the reason I thought, I should do this is to try to talk about, my experience because it is so different from most other people's. And that we all go through these things differently. And my menopause was not normal, but also just what it was.
And that's all you could do, really. It is what it is, isn't it?
And because I know from those whispers about that woman that I mentioned earlier, lots of people do go through this like what I've been through. And so I did want to talk about it and say that this is a different kind of normal.
Yeah. And you also didn't realize how much I was going to talk about your life in general because that's what I like to do. Get fabulous ladies to talk about all sorts of things, including their bits. Right. Now, do you think that you have a fun fact at all?
No. I need to look it up.
Is there any fun fact about Kim Jong-un you can share with us?
I do not know if Kim Jong-un is aware of menopause or what he knows about that.
Right. Is he that removed from reality?
Oh, yes. Well, this is not really that fun, but I'll throw it out there as the fun fact on the Kim Jong-un theme is that lots of people think that I think the reason that he became the leader of North Korea is not because of his father, but because of his mother. So he had a very ambitious, powerful mother. She was very powerful in the regime the Kim Jong-il had multiple children by multiple wives. So there was a bit of jockeying between the various wives to get their children in pole position.
Right.
So, people think it's all this regime of men and things, with the crazy haircuts and things.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of powerful women and they're working behind the scenes. So.
It's like that woman that reports the news. I've seen her a bit.
The pink lady.
Yeah, she looks pretty formidable as a lady. Right,
yeah,
okay.
Kim Jong-un's sister, she's really running the show. So, yeah, she's the one who makes sure that everything works, and she's the one who has the same interest. She's the only person who has the same interest in him and that regime surviving. So,
yeah. And it just seems so like just that whole suppression and, the starvation and of your populace for what? It is, yeah.
Staying in power. That's all he cares about. Every day he cares about staying in power. So, yeah, and his sister cares about that too. So she's helping him. So the women do have very clear roles there. And so his wife is the Kate Middleton of North Korea. She's very glamorous and, modern, and she's modernizing the North Korean monarchy in that way. So all still do have their roles.
But still dictatorial.
Yes, and all those women are in their 30s. I cannot confirm whether or not they have experienced premature ovarian failure.
Okay.
And that's tying it all up.
That was beautiful. It was almost like you're a journalist that you brought it back, like in reincorporation. Look at that. Well, thank you very much for your fabulous time and your fabulous story, which I'm sure some people will be interested and resonate with, etc. And yes, we want to reflect all women, and I'm glad that you feel at home and like yourself again in New Zealand. And we're glad to have you back. And yeah, and hopefully you stay for a while. But who knows, hey? You don't like to project too far into the future.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'll be here for quite a while. My boy is really happy learning to be a Kiwi too. So
that must be pretty delightful. Yeah, hooray. Yeah. Okay, fabulous. Thank you very much. And I might see you at my show at Circuit Theatre.
Yes, indeed. I will be there. And you never know, maybe there'll even be a story on Stuff and in the Dominion Post about it.
That would be really great. Oh, I'll get accused of nepotism now. Okay, cheers. No, thanks a lot.
We do it regardless.
Okay, cheers. So that was the extremely fancy Ms. Anna Fifield, who has lived life to the full in her 46 years and then some, including 10 years in post-menopause, which hasn't slowed her down in the slightest. And I'm glad to have maybe played a small part in dispelling some of that shame at the cronification. Shall we say dispelling cronification, shamification, etc. Barren spinsterhood is to be embraced at the beginning of our third age, where we bring all of our knowledge and kick-ass awesomeness to life in general. Thanks for listening as always. Tomorrow we have World Menopause Day special. How exciting. And we are going to revisit the woman who told me that there was even a World Menopause Day in the first place. My third ever podcast guest, Tusiata Avia, who has some news on the menopause front to share with everybody. Intriguing. Till then, thanks to everyone who came to see me in Palmerston North. Thanks to the 700 of you who have already booked tickets to my Wellington season of Olive Copperbottom, which is bonkers. Love Wellington. Let's fill up that preview to make some money for the Wellington Homeless Women's Trust. Sign up to my Patreon if you want to contribute to this podcast. Like me on the socials. And they've released some extra tickets for Showy Ovaries Live on October 21st for the Nelson Festival of the Arts. So jump onto those and I'll see you at the Suitor. But until tomorrow, Showy Ovarians, stay juicy, everybody.